Hi, I'm Ahmed Shabuddin, filling in for Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, 45 seasons of Sesame Street, we'll look at the show setting the standard for children's educational television. With me is digital producer Malika Bilal. Malika, you have no idea how happy I am to be back in the stream.
And we're happy to have you, a stream original.
A stream original. I've always been in the stream, and today is an epic show.
It is epic. That's a good way to put it. It's kind of even an understatement, I'd say. Our community is so excited about this show.
I believe it.
As you and I are. And so we asked them, what have you learned from Sesame Street? And the thing is, it's really a global answer. We got responses from all over the world. So Alimi on Twitter says, I learned a whole lot, from morals to cooking, arithmetic. It made me love mathematics. And over in Scotland, we got this tweet from Rachel who says, I learned, don't leave the tap running when brushing your teeth. They even had a song about it.
And out of all the things that you've been reading, I would imagine it struck some memories of what you learned.
I learned my numbers with the count.
Fair enough. I learned how to sit still to watch the show.
Nice.
To not have ADD. And maybe we'll discuss that a little bit later. But 45 years on, the television series Sesame Street continues to promote preschool education and teach children about the world around us. Millions have grown up with Big Bird and friends, learning about ABCs, social skills, healthy habits, and so much more. Versions of the show have spread to over 150 countries, and with Sesame Street co-productions in India, Denmark, South Africa, Brazil, just to name a few, it's grown into the longest street in the world, all while setting a high standard for children's educational television. So today, we want to talk about the global impact and educational mission of Sesame Street. With me to discuss this, in New York, we have Carol Lynn Parenti, executive producer of Sesame Street. She's worked with the show in various roles for over 25 years, helping Sesame Street win more Emmy Awards than any other TV program in history. And June Lee, she's vice president of international research with Sesame Workshop. That's the nonprofit educational organization behind Sesame Street. Also in New York, a very, very special guest with us, Elmo. We're so thrilled you could make it. How you doing, Elmo?
Oh, hello, Ahmed. Hello, Malika. How are you?
We can't wait to get started. Let's start with some basics, if I may, Carol Lynn. Why did Sesame Street start in the first place? I mean, what was the aim? What was the vision?
Well, it was really an experiment to see if what was a relatively new medium of television could be used for educational purposes. And so it was just a dinner party conversation that started this thinking, and the test went on. 45 years later, we are impacting kids all over the world.
So, Elmo, we all love Sesame Street so much, even if we've never actually been there. We all feel like we know it. But what would you say is something surprising about Sesame Street?
Boy, something surprising about Sesame Street? Well, that's a good question. Well, we have some of the best food in the whole world. At Hooper's store, Alan makes the best chocolate chip pancakes you'll ever have in your life.
I believe it. I believe it.
Elmo's making me hungry.
Yeah, you're making us hungry, Elmo, but hopefully.
And it sounds like that's an invitation to come. So
yeah.
While we ponder that invitation.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you very much. June, I actually want to go to you because people are asking questions online as we speak. So there's a couple on the same theme. Gordon tweets in saying, how has the methodology of educating child viewers changed, if at all, over the years? And Anam says the same thing, basically. How is the show adapting with the fast and changing media technologies? June, care to answer that?
Sure, yeah. There's a lot that's common in Sesame Street all around the world. And all around the world, even if you're watching different versions of Sesame Street, you really see the same essence of Sesame Street come through, whether you're talking about a show in South Africa or a show in Bangladesh. And that's because really the approach underlying education has been really consistent on Sesame Street. And a lot of it is because we really follow a research-driven model. A lot of our content that we're creating is really driven by research, and we really take the content that we're creating out to children and to parents and really bringing their voice into the production process. And that has not changed, in the course of 45 years. And I think that really underlies the success of the show and the educational impact of the show. And more the media landscape is getting really, really complicated and crowded. But we really take that philosophy of being research-driven, being curriculum-driven, and being very thoughtful about the way we approach our content. And that's really, whether you're talking about television or tablets or smartphones or computers, we take that approach to all of the content that we create. And I think that really ensures a really consistent and high quality in terms of education across all of our platforms.
Most certainly, and on that note, Carol Lynn, I want to ask you, when we talk about diversity, we talk about tolerance, obviously two key themes for Sesame Street. Looking at where we are today here in America, I mean, Sesame Street is known for adapting, for reflecting social changes, and we're all familiar with the rumors circulating around Bert and Ernie, for example, being gay. That's one example. And producers have long said, listen, they don't portray a gay couple. In fact, the quote is, there's no plans for them to do so in the future. Though they're different people, they can be good friends. And that's the lesson to be learned. But I'm curious, given the huge political shifts we've seen here in America in the last couple of years around this issue, do you envision a time when maybe there will be a gay character on Sesame Street? How do you determine when is the right time?
Well, diversity is a really important part of the curriculum. It has been from the very beginning. It was one of the first children's shows to model a diverse community, an inner city community, and it was groundbreaking for that. We take great pride in the fact that we not only model ethnic diversity, but diversity of people with all abilities, and that's something that's still a signature for Sesame Street. But I think it's important to recognize that we're a preschool show, and as such we deal with everything we deal with from the perspective of preschoolers and what's appropriate to them. And so characters like Bert and Ernie are modeling a good friendship. We have a character like Oscar the Grouch, which I'm not sure in today's day and age might have even made it to a preschool show, except that was really designed, again, to show differing perspectives and really teach kids about sort of accepting differences and learning to get along and conflict resolution. So all of the ways into the diversity curriculum have been a really important part of Sesame Street and something we're very proud of.
And on that note, I definitely want to talk about Oscar the Grouch a little bit later in the show. I know other people do as well. But before we do, here's a quick look at what's going on in season 45 of Sesame Street.
Oh, here, Murray.
Hey! Welcome to Sesame Street!
Hello. Hi.
Ice Cube.
Power of a yet. That's the power of a yet.
What's the word? What's the word on the street?
Ridiculous.
Back here, Cookie.
That's what makes you so useful.
Go on.
Excellent.
And that is what you get with the power of a yet.
So Carolyn, might look to some people, just looking at that, like a silly show, a kid's show, something not to be taken so seriously. But what would you say we're actually learning from someone like the grouchy neighbor who lives in a garbage can? I mean, what's the actual educational value?
Well, it's about that, learning differing perspectives, learning to get along with others, and conflict resolution and self-regulation, impulse control. All of those curriculum goals are really important for preschoolers. And the humor, which you coming off the sizzle reel, humor is a tool we use, but it's an educational tool. So we use that to grab the attention of the kids and their parents, and hopefully have a deeper educational impact from paying attention to the content.
Excuse me.
Hi. Yes, Cookie.
Sorry, me no mean to interrupt. This going terrific. But me just want to say that me poster monster for self-control.
Well,
he certainly is.
I think that's a shining example of self-control. And Cookie, I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad you interjected because, you know, I was talking with Malika earlier, and to your point about self-regulation, the one thing I remembered from Sesame Street is that it taught me to kind of sit down and take a moment and actually watch something and prepare. And so, Cookie, do you ever feel as though there's too much going on around you, that you have ADHD, that you can't focus?
Well, you know, when there's cookie in front of me have hard time focusing on anything but the cookie. Me want to eat that cookie as soon as me can. But you know, it's not easy to not eat cookie, but it's good for you to kind of wait, you know, have a little delayed gratification, learn some strategies. So that's what we do. Me look at cookie and we try not to eat cookie. It's not easy. We're not quite mastered yet, but we get
self-regulation.
And I will say the one thing that I learned from Cookie Monster is that cookies are a sometimes food. It's
true.
Carrots are sometimes just as good. But I have a Facebook comment here that I want to bring up. Carolyn, I'll direct this to you. They are always delicious. I had one for breakfast. Carolyn, we got this Facebook comment from Mikey. He says, what are some of your favorite stories regarding lives changed? And he mentions a pivotal story like the death of Mr. Hooper. So I've gone to the Sesame Street web page and I pulled up, this is from 1983. This is an episode where Big Bird and the other characters on Sesame Street learn about death, the death of a shopkeeper, beloved member of the Sesame Street team. There's definitely deeper issues here that you're educating children about, Carolyn. Can you tell us how that happens? What's the thought process behind that?
Well, you know, as long as I've been at the workshop, that's a little before my time. But I think what's fascinating about that was a situation that came out of a real world situation. The actor, Willie, who played Mr. Hooper, passed away suddenly. And it's a perfect illustration of how we're not a kiddie show, that we really respect kids and think of them as just, you know, short people. And we dealt with the subject of death within the neighborhood and the community of Sesame Street by telling the truth about what happened in the way that we're trying to model how parents should deal with their children, and that giving them the information they need, even something as sad as death, but being honest about it in a way that's appropriate for kids to understand, and just mostly being open to their questions. Because in that episode, Big Bird, they tell Big Bird that Mr. Hooper passed, and he says, okay, when are we going to see him again? So there's a developmental sort of level that you have to deal with young children and recognize the most important thing is to be open to their questions and let them ask them so that you have a better understanding of what they're taking away from the situation.
And Caroline, with that in mind, you know, obviously sensitive topics are some things you have to address, but maybe the environment, the platform upon which you address them isn't TV. And, you know, we've seen that kind of shift with Sesame Street. I want to ask you, with issues like divorce, with issues like parents being in prison and other sensitive issues, it seems that even though there's, you know, months of research that needs to go into a show or a topic like that, sometimes you decide and err on the side of putting it online but not putting it on TV. Why is that?
Well, a lot of those subjects you talk about are difficult subjects, but they're also targeted subjects. So something like incarceration is a really interesting area because there's so many kids dealing with an incarcerated parent in the family, but that's a targeted group of people that messaging may not be right for the broadcast audience. So we put together, there's still video components, but we put them together in kits that are distributed through partners that are directly in the communities of the affected families, and that's a really great way to get the information that the kids need, but to the right people. And so digital platforms have been a great way for us to distribute that content.
So has it been at all challenging? You know, a lot of people in the media business across the board talking about the challenge of the converged media landscape or whatever it's called, or do you see it more as an opportunity? Because there's some consistency issues perhaps if a character is introduced online but he doesn't actually exist on Sesame Street.
Yes, that's true, but all of the digital platforms, I think as an educational organization, the beauty of these platforms is that they now allow interactivity, and how powerful for kids to really have a chance now to interact with their favorite characters, So whether it's Elmo or Cookie, they can actually use tablets and mobile platforms to have an interactive experience, and that really deepens the educational impact.
And speaking of the educational impact being deepened, it's really happening all over the world. So let's take a quick look at some of the international versions of Sesame Street.
Sunny day, sweeping the clouds away. On my way to where the air is sweet. Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street? Come and play, everything's a-okay. Friendly neighbors there, that's where we meet. Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street? How to get to Sesame Street? How to get to Sesame Street?
You couldn't see it, but I have to point out that during that little jingle in that clip, Cookie Monster couldn't resist not dancing. Do you love to dance, Cookie Monster?
Well, you know, me love that song.
You love that song. You love that song as much as you love dancing cookies. Well,
Yeah.
I have some good news for you. We have someone here with us today, just so happens, someone with real international Sesame Street cred. Please welcome Chamki in New Delhi. She lives on Gali Gali Sim Sim, or India's Sesame Street. Hello, Chamki.
Hi everyone! I've been waiting to come and see you all.
Well, we're so excited to have you. Chamki, I want to ask you, just, for those who don't know what goes down on Gali Gali Sim Sim, what have you been learning? What have you been learning there?
Right now, we're learning to clean the gully. That's what we're doing right now. It's called the Clean Gully Campaign, and it's so much fun.
So, when you're learning all these things, you must have moments when you're doing something and you feel as though this is a perfect opportunity to realize what you want to do in the future. What do you want to do when you grow up?
Well, I've thought of a lot of things. Sometimes I think I want to be an astronaut and go up to the space. Sometimes I want to become a doctor. Even a carpenter is good, they have a lot of fun. And sometimes I feel maybe I want to be like Miss Malala or like Mr. Satyarthi, help out other children, become a teacher, maybe an actor. I'm pretty good at acting.
Well, Ahmed, you asked about what Chamki wanted to be when she grew up.
Right.
I'm seeing this tweet here from Abdullahi. He says, I grew up, he's speaking about himself, of course, watching Sesame Street, sitting and waiting for the show to start at 4 p.m. from a local TV station in Nigeria. And so broadening that out, talking about the international aspect of this, there are people commenting about what the effect of that is. And so, June, we have this tweet here from Laurel. She says, my mom loves Sesame Street because she learned English by watching it with her kids when she was a new immigrant to Canada. So that's one of the positives. On the other hand, we have a tweet showing a different side. This is from El Haji, June, and he says, Egypt and Indonesia are Islamic countries, and the US is a cultural funded program that instills American values, i.e. mass culture. So we have seen criticism like that online, June. What do you say to criticism like that, Sesame Street is funded by the US government in some parts of the world, and people say this is instilling American values versus the values of the local culture?
Yeah, I think that's a point well taken, but I also want to underscore the fact that all of our co-productions have educational goals that are locally determined. So they are really driven by educators in country whom we consult with and work with to rely on them to tell us what the needs of children in that country are. So that it's absolutely locally determined, as are the characters, the production, all of the writing all of that is done in country because we really want a show that reflects local values and priorities. And when we precisely want to avoid being seen as imperialistic or coming in from the outside. So getting that broad base of support for our project in country is incredibly important, and getting working with local partners and getting that kind of local input and really letting our local partners and educators drive the project, I think really is a key ingredient in speaking to its success around the world.
And Carolyn, I see that you're nodding as June was speaking there. I just have to ask you as well, I mean, do you see though how in places like Pakistan and in the Middle East where anti-American sentiment may be high, there's people who think as though Sesame Street's educational objectives may be in some way or another a mask for US foreign policy or geopolitical strategy. What are your thoughts on the issue?
I think it goes back to what June's saying, which was where the nodding is coming from. It's really important when we embark in these endeavors to really look at what the local needs are, and then a local team is picked. We do things like training the puppeteers and working with the writers from our years and years of experience at how to engage kids, but everything from the curriculum to the look of what their set or their neighborhood looks like to their puppets can be all modeled after what their ideas are, what their curriculum is, and what the needs of local children are.
Well, I want to interject here because people online are watching the show and they're sharing what it's doing to them, really. So this is a tweet we got from Lynn, who says, I'm watching the stream, watching Cookie Monster on the stream talk about delayed gratification by not eating the cookie. That's the future of edutainment right there. And we also got a question here. And Elmo, I will direct this question to you. Valerie wants to know, if you didn't live on Sesame Street, where in the world would you want to live?
Oh boy, well, that's a very difficult question. Let's see. Elmo can't imagine living anywhere else. But maybe Elmo doesn't know, Malibu? Somewhere where it's sunny. No, but Elmo loves Sesame Street. It's his favorite place in the whole world.
Well, I think that's fair. I think many of us want to live somewhere where it's sunny, so a fair answer from you. But back to just one last serious point about a place that is sunny, because I know, Carolyn, you often talk about the importance of tolerance, and we have this statistic. I just want to show you, if you take a look at this, 18% of Palestinian children, after watching the local version of Sesame Street, have 18% higher scores on cooperation measures. So forgive me, it's not 18% of Palestinian children, but it's Palestinian children who watch have 18% higher scores on cooperation measures than those who don't watch. There's been controversy around certain characters who've been introduced to the Israeli version of Sesame Street. Why is tolerance such an important part of what Sesame Street is doing?
Well, I think it's about, sort of making just good citizens of we prepare kids for school, but we also prepare them for life. And so the notion of, understanding and accepting differences in others is sort of a universal sort of curriculum goal. Again, it's employed in territories where that's an important goal for them. And I think, I just go back to the comment that was made about Cookie Monster talking about not eating a cookie being edutainment. That sort of makes me happy, because what we try and do on Sesame Street and in all our versions globally is make the content so much fun that you hardly know you're learning. And just as you spoke to learning to sort of take a breath, pay attention to directions. These are things that all of those self-regulation skills are so important for kids, and that's the way they learn. Teachers tell us that if kids can do that, then they have a better and easier job of teaching them the curriculum that they need to. So kids are modeling that struggle with self-regulation in the same way that Cookie models that by trying not to eat a cookie. So the strategies he spoke of are really valid for preparing kids for school.
Yeah, it's the same strategies as you just mentioned. Not just for children though, Carolyn. I'd have to say adults, at least adults like me. I think we're all struggling with this self-regulation issue, but that's all we have time for. I think it's worth mentioning we just made some history here. This is the first time international friends have met outside of Sesame Street. Malika, any last thoughts coming in?
Well, on the history, Emma says, my husband grew up in Yemen with Arabic, Sesame Street. I in New Zealand with English. The show is a bridge.
So, you know, obviously it's a bridge, and I want to say that before we leave Cookie Monster, I heard you have a birthday coming up, so we got you a little present. I hope you got it.
No, you got me present?
You didn't get it?
Where present?
Give him the present.
Oh, that... Cookie! Happy birthday to me! Nom 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 nom.